I'd been driving the Dalton Highway for 20 years when I saw my own headlights coming straight at me, on a stretch of road where there shouldn't have been another soul for 100 miles. The radio was dead, the night was silent, and yet there I was, staring at myself through the windshield of a truck identical to mine, idling in the middle of the frozen dark. You think you've seen everything the road can throw at you: snowstorms, breakdowns, things crawling out of ditches. But nothing prepares you for meeting your own ghost at 60 miles an hour. What was it? A trick of the mind? A warning? Or something that had finally caught up after all those endless miles alone? Keep listening. Because what happened next tore apart everything I believed about time, memory, and the price you pay when the road remembers your name. Don't miss this one. Hit that follow button, drop a like, and stay till the end. You're going to want to hear how this drive really ends. I never knew what scared me more that winter, the way blood can look black in headlight glare, or the way a stranger could say my name like he'd been carrying it in his mouth for years. The road north of Fairbanks does not sing, it grinds. It eats sound and gives back only the steady thrum of tires and the dry hiss of snow. Folks call it the Dalton, like a man's last name, and that's the right kind of intimacy for a road that sizes you up every mile and remembers what you owe it. I'd been paying my dues for more than 20 years. Long haul, all weather, freight stacked high and strapped down tighter than secrets. I was small and square-shouldered, the sort of woman who could throw a frozen chain with one hand and pour coffee with the other. People on docks called me ma'am until I told them to cut it out and just say Tessa. The truck was an old Freightliner I'd named Little Bear, not for cuteness, but because he complained when I asked him to wake up and then lumbered steady once he did. Paint scuffed by 100 loadouts, cab plastered with a sticker of an Alaska brown that had lost an eye to sun fade. On the dash, we kept our household: a thermos with dents like healed ribs, a dime store St. Christopher somebody's grandma pressed into my palm in Anchorage, and a postcard from my daughter, Ivy, who'd moved to Seattle and liked to mail me photographs of rain I could smell before I opened the envelope. Dispatch had printed my run on cheap paper that curled at the edges. Building supplies and heaters headed for a place barely big enough for a dot on a map. A work camp locals called Raven's Hollow, tucked past Coldfoot, where the spruce grew thin and the sky grew larger than any one person could carry. The plan, if you can call a Northern Promise a plan, was simple: go up, drop, turn, and come down before the next storm decided to kneel on the shoulder of the Brooks Range and pray me off the pass. I loaded at dawn that never really dawned. In winter up here, the sun doesn't rise so much as remember it once had faith in us. The yard hands wore Carhartt and the kind of knitted caps mothers make when they still believe their boys will call home. We worked brisk to stay warm. Straps sang under my gloves. A man with a beard white as aluminum frost asked if I wanted extra chains. I told him I always want extra chains because I always want to come back. The CB crackled the way a wood stove breathes when you feed it too fast. "Northbound, watch the river bridge," came a voice I knew from last year and the year before. "Black ice like a bad idea, and Coldfoot's pie is already gone." "Copy that," I said. "I don't eat pie when I got hills to climb." "Don't lie, Tessa," the voice laughed. "You eat pie even when you don't." I rolled out slow, letting the tires decide whose side they were on. Snow lifted in sheets from the shoulder and sailed across the lane like ghost fish. My wipers worked in time with my heart. After Fox, the world narrowed. Spruce shouldered close. Somewhere to my left, the river ran under armor, singing itself a metal lullaby. I listened the way I always did to the sound a road makes when it's telling you the truth. A new rattle at the bunk, a stiffer note in the gearbox, a hiss that meant powder blown into the grill. Out here, you live by what you hear and what you refuse to. At Hilltop, I went in for coffee, though coffee is not the right word up here in January. It's religion without the sermon. The waitress called me Han and topped me off until the cup wore a halo. A pair of pipeline hands sat at the counter with their shoulders touching, both of them smelling like diesel and fresh laundry, which is to say hope. "You going past the Yukon?" one asked. "That's the road," I said. He nodded toward the television where a weather map trembled under a red banner. "Tonight's gonna do something stupid." "Tonight always does," I told him. I left Bill's under the mug and went back out into the air that bit my teeth. The first warning came across the CB not long past sunset, which is a generous word for that hour when the light gives up and the cold shakes out its blanket. A woman's voice, steady and official, like the Coast Guard for land. "All northbound units be advised," she said. "State troopers are looking for a young male. Medium height, dark parka, possible injury to one arm. Suspected in a violent offense near Circle Hot Springs. Do not pick up any hitchhikers." Repeat, do not pick up any hitchhikers. Nobody answered. Out here, you don't argue with weather or advice. You just add it to the list of things you'll wish you'd remembered when the road calls in its debts. I drove, and I thought about hands. The hands that strapped down my cargo. The hands that stitched Ivy's coat the winter before she left. The hands that taught me to float a shifting box past a stubborn gear. My first teacher was a mechanic named Santos down in Tacoma. He used to say, "Feel the truck like you feel a sleeping dog. Put your hand on its ribs. Learn the slow and the quick." He smoked too much and told stories about storm surf that could lift a barge like a child lifts a toy. When he died, I fixed his old socket set and sent it to his son with a note that said, "Use only if necessary, which is always." The road is full of ghosts that call you by your first name and tell you jokes only they get. By the time I hit the Yukon River Bridge, the wind had decided to practice being a knife. The water below was a black thought wrapped in white armor. I downshifted before the incline and let Little Bear walk his way up. No heroics, no slips. At the crest, I breathed and told the dashboard we could both live another day if we paid attention. Past the bridge, the Dalton behaves like a man who has already told you what he wants. He does not repeat himself. The snow grew thicker. My radius of belief shrank to the ovals the headlights scribbled onto the world. I turned the radio low and hummed under my breath so I'd remember I was still a person and not just a system of reactions. The heater clunked and then settled. In the corners of the windshield, frost drew ferns so beautiful they made my throat hurt. The second warning came sharper, like the edge of glass under a glove. Same woman. Tighter now, the way voices get when the words they carry are heavy. All units north and south of Coldfoot. Update from troopers. The suspect may be seeking rides. He may present calm. Do not engage. Report sightings. Again, do not pick up hitchhikers. Copy, a gravel voice said. But lady, there ain't hitchhikers in this kind of cold. There's just bodies we didn't stop for. Nobody laughed. The radio went back to its own weather. I told myself I would not stop for anyone. I told myself the road was a contract and I had already signed. But telling yourself a thing and believing it are cousins that do not always speak. Between Jim River and the long black nothing that falls off the map if you don't pin it down, I pulled into a turnout, set my brake, and went out with a headlamp to check my straps. The cold snatched at my eyelashes. Leather went wood stiff under my fingers. I tugged every ratchet twice. I listened to the sound of the load talking back, the hush of tarp, the little chuff of wind that sneaks where it isn't supposed to. Little Bear ticked and cooled. When the wind paused, I could hear the far river like a dog turning twice before it lies down. Back in the cab, I thumbed my phone into life long enough to read a message Ivy had sent earlier. "Mama, if you're anywhere, you can get me that blue yarn. Do it. The soft kind, you know? I want to knit a hat for you the way you used to make mine." I wrote her back that there is nothing as soft as a promise, and I'd try. I did not say that the only store between here and nowhere was the kind of place that sells spark plugs, jerky, and coffee filters, and still somehow smells like church. I eased back onto the road. The snow had changed its mind. Now it came in small, tight grains that bit at the glass. A slow-drifting fog rose from the spruce in pale rags. In the beams ahead of me, every flake chose to be the only thing that had ever fallen. I squinted and sat forward. My shoulders set themselves, the way they always did when the world narrowed to a tunnel. He appeared first as an interruption in the math. The shoulder was clean in that spot, not much room for drifting, and the ovals of my headlights slid on it like skaters. Then, in the right-hand wash of light, a shape did not move the way snow moves. A person where no person should be. Parka hood, mitts, the hitchhiker's stance adjusted to a cold that would slice you open from the inside if you let it. I felt my hands do what they always do, tighten, then gently loosen on the wheel. I felt my foot lift, then rest. I told myself to look away. The CB's speaker hissed softly like it knew my name. The figure lifted one arm. The pose wasn't the loose, almost cocky swing of someone looking to thumb their way home. It was formal, even polite, like someone asking permission to speak in a room where grief had already said everything there was to say. My first teacher, Santos, used to say, "The road looks at you back, mija." I never understood him until I saw that man raising his hand into my light, like it was the last warmth he would ever borrow. For one breath, the Dalton stared at me like a woman who knew me better than I wished. The official voice from the CB arrived too late to help. "Reminder, all units do not pick up. Suspect may be injured. He may say what you want to hear." The figure's arm trembled. The wind leaned into the glass. Somewhere far behind me, foxfire rippled in the upper air and tried to remember what green felt like. I did not stop. I did what the voice told me, and I did what good sense told me, and I did what a mother who has promised a daughter a blue hat would do. I tapped Little Bear's horn, once, short, the way you salute another life, and I let the truck roll by. And still, when the beam slid off him, I saw the streak stamped across his sleeve at the wrist where the parka had ridden up. Not rust, not road dirt, a dark that looked too heavy to be anything but blood. I drove past and the road watched me go. The cold grinned its thin grin. The bridge ahead shone like an idea polished too often. I told myself he'd walk to the next turnout and find someone who needed a good deed worse than I needed a safe arrival. I told myself I'd done the smart thing, the right thing. I almost believed it, until the speaker on the CB sighed like an exhausted nurse, and a quiet voice I did not recognize said, "If you kept going just now, driver, I hope you're the kind who sleeps with her lights on." I pressed the mic and let my thumb hover over the button, but I didn't answer. The road has rules about what you say out loud. I took a breath and kept to my line. The snow fell heavier, the fog unrolled, trees stepped closer to listen, and a mile ahead, where the beam of my lights faltered and recovered, the world narrowed again, this time around a set of footprints blown new into the shoulder, pacing my speed like I'd been the one doing the walking all along. By the time I hit the next turnoff, I couldn't get the image out of my head. The man's arm lifted slow and deliberate, that dark stain riding his wrist like a secret that didn't want to stay hidden. The Dalton has a way of feeding your thoughts back to you over and over until they start sounding like someone else whispering in your ear. Little Bear's wipers thudded in rhythm. The heater sighed, and under all of it, I could hear something like a heartbeat. Mine, or the truck's, or maybe the road's. Out here, you start confusing the three. I kept driving. What else was I supposed to do? If I stopped for every ghost that waved at me on the Dalton, I'd never make it home. I told myself that over and over, like a prayer you don't really believe in but keep saying anyway just to fill the quiet. After 10 more miles, the snow eased. The sky cracked open just enough to spill a smear of pale green light. The aurora was crawling low, thin ribbons, nervous and restless, like it was trying to find something it lost. I pulled into a rest turnout to check my straps again. Habit, or maybe superstition. The air slapped me the moment I opened the door, cold like broken glass. My breath fogged, thick. I moved down the side of the trailer, knocking frost off the ratchets, tugging at each line until the vibration told me it was right. Nothing loose, nothing shifted. I was about to climb back in when I saw it. Footprints. They were fresh, edges still crisp, no snow blown into them yet. They came from the tree line and stopped about 20 feet from my truck. Stopped and turned back the way they came. No vehicle tracks, no sign of anyone else. Just those lonely prints pacing toward me and away again. I crouched down, gloved hand brushing the top of one. The heel was deep, the toes dragging a little, like whoever it was had been limping. My stomach tightened. "Okay," I whispered to the night. "That's enough story for now." I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and fired up the engine. The radio hissed, then a voice broke through. Soft, a little distorted, but close. "Northbound Freightliner," it said. "You passed me." My hand froze on the gear shift. I grabbed the mic. "Say again?" Silence. Then faintly, "Don't stop now." I scanned the CB channel numbers. Nothing. No call sign. Just the wind chewing through static. I switched channels. 1, 2, then 3. Nothing but snow crackle and distance. Little Bear idled rough, like he could feel my pulse jumping. I eased him back onto the road, tires crunching through the fresh layer. Every mile marker felt like a test. By the time I rolled into Coldfoot, the snow had stopped entirely, just low clouds and the smell of diesel. I parked in front of the cafe, the kind of place where the coffee's always burnt, but no one complains because it's hot and free. Inside, the air was thick with bacon grease and tired laughter. A handful of truckers sat in a corner booth, voices low, eyes on the window like they expected the wind to come through it. I took a stool at the counter, nodding to a waitress with a blonde braid and a sweatshirt that said Arctic Circle or Bust. She poured without asking. "North Run?" "Yeah, Raven's Hollow. Long way in this weather. Always is." A guy a few seats down, heavy parka, face rough from years on the road, leaned over his mug. "You hear the alerts?" "Yeah." "State boys found a car by the Yukon Bridge. Door open, engine still running." "What happened to the driver?" He shrugged. Blood in the snow. No footprints leading away. Just gone. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Maybe animals." He gave me a look. "Animals don't shut off headlights, lady." The waitress crossed herself, like that might keep the dark out. I finished my coffee in 3 gulps, left cash on the counter, and went back out before anyone asked another question. When I climbed into the cab, the air inside was still warm. My thermos sat on the dash where I'd left it. But the postcard from Ivy, the one with the picture of rain on glass, was gone. I searched under the seat, behind the clipboard, on the floor. Nothing. Just the faint smell of cold air where it shouldn't have been. I started the truck. The CB clicked alive again, unprompted. Static, then a voice I hadn't heard before. Male. Calm. Close. "You missed your turn," it said, then silence. I stared at the mic for a long time, knuckles white on the wheel. I didn't touch it, didn't speak, just shifted into gear and pulled out onto the highway again. As the town lights fell behind me, the darkness closed in tighter, like it had been waiting for me to leave. And somewhere behind the line of spruce, under that slow green sky, something moved, keeping pace, just outside the edge of my high beams. By the time I left Coldfoot behind, the world had gone silent again, too silent. The kind of quiet that presses on your eardrums and makes you wonder if something out there is holding its breath right along with you. The Dalton stretched ahead, a black ribbon carved into white bones. I told myself to focus. Deliver the load, get paid, get back. That's the deal. No ghost stories, no weird radio chatter, no missing postcards. But the longer I drove, the more that voice from the CB replayed itself. "You missed your turn." I hadn't missed anything. There was only one road north, and I'd been driving it half my life. Yet every curve looked wrong tonight, every shadow too long. At mile marker 269, Little Bear's engine coughed once, just a hiccup, and then caught again, a warning. The gauges looked fine, but I knew that sound. I'd have to check the fuel line before the real cold set in. The fog came next. Not the usual thin mist that hugs the road, but a thick, low roll of it, pale as milk and twice as suffocating. My headlights bounced off it uselessly, making the air in front of me look solid. I slowed to a crawl, leaning forward to see just 10 feet of road at a time. Then something flickered in the fog. Movement. At first I thought it was a trick of the lights, snow drifting sideways. But then it took shape. A person again, standing dead center in the lane. Heart slamming, I hit the brakes. The trailer groaned behind me, tires biting into packed ice. The figure didn't move. He was close enough now that I could make out details, a torn parka sleeve, one arm bent awkwardly against his side. The same man I'd seen hours before, the one I hadn't stopped for. My breath fogged up the glass. He was watching me, or maybe just facing the truck, like he'd been waiting for it to come back. I didn't open the door, didn't move. Then, slowly, he raised that same injured arm. And this time, I saw his face. Young, maybe 20. Eyes too wide. Skin pale from cold or fear. It was hard to tell. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I did the stupidest thing I could have done. I rolled the window down just an inch. The cold punched through instantly. "Hey," I shouted, "you need help?" For a moment, he didn't react. Then he took one step forward and the fog seemed to move with him, like it was breathing around his shoulders. "Please," he said. The voice was raw. "He's still out here." My throat tightened. Who? But before he could answer, the CB on my dash hissed again. "Driver northbound," the same woman's voice said, urgent now. "If you see anyone on the road, do not engage. The suspect is armed and extremely dangerous. Repeat, armed and dangerous." I looked back at him. His mouth was moving, but the radio drowned it out. He wasn't holding a gun. He wasn't holding anything at all. His hands were empty. Fingers blue. For a long second, neither of us moved. Then I saw it. Something flickering behind him in the fog. A second shape, taller, broader, coming closer. "Get in!" I yelled. "Now!" He stumbled forward, half running, half falling. I yanked the lock open, reached across, and shoved the door wide. He climbed in, breathing hard, clutching his arm. "Shut it!" I barked. "Now!" He slammed it behind him just as the headlights caught the other figure. A man stepping out of the fog, face hidden under a hood, something glinting in his hand. I jammed the truck into gear. Little Bear roared to life, tires spinning, trailer fishtailing until it caught traction and lunged forward. In the mirrors, the fog swallowed the man whole. The kid beside me was shaking uncontrollably, eyes wide with terror. Blood, fresh, bright, streaked down from a cut near his elbow. "Who the hell was that?" I demanded. He didn't answer at first, just stared out the window, breathing fast. "Talk to me, kid." Finally, he looked at me. "He killed her," he said softly. "And now he's coming for me." The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't the dispatcher. It was a man's voice, low, calm, too calm. "You shouldn't have stopped, Tessa." The kid's head snapped toward the speaker. "You know my name?" I whispered. The voice laughed, quiet like the sound of something sharp being drawn across stone. "I've known your name a long time." The CB went dead. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of the wind rushing past the cab and the kids breathing, ragged and uneven. "Who are you?" I asked him. He swallowed hard. "My name's Eli. I didn't kill anyone." "Then who did?" He looked down at his lap, at the dark stain spreading across his sleeve. "He did," he said, "and he won't stop until he finds me." Outside, the fog thickened again, curling around the truck like fingers. and through the static of the dead radio, I swore I could still hear that voice, whispering, laughing, keeping pace with us in the dark. Eli sat curled in the passenger seat, clutching his arm like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world. The blood had soaked through his jacket and was dripping onto the rubber mat by his boots. Each drop looked black in the dashboard light. I tore open the first aid kit and tossed it into his lap. "Hold pressure," I said, "and don't move around too much. I just detailed this floor last month." He blinked at me, startled. You're not going to throw me out?" "Kid, I've done plenty of stupid things tonight, but I draw the line at tossing a bleeding man into a snowbank." He tried to smile, but his face barely moved. I pressed the gas and focused on the narrow ribbon of road ahead, headlights carving tunnels through fog. The sky above was a dead gray, heavy with more snow. We rode like that for maybe 10 minutes. The silence between us was the kind that buzzes. Finally, I asked, "You said he killed someone. Who?" He shifted, winced. Her name was Claire. She worked at the camp, Raven's Hollow. We were both contractors, maintenance crew. She found something she shouldn't have. I kept my eyes on the road. "Found what?" He hesitated. "You wouldn't believe me." "I've been driving this road for 20 years, I said. "I've seen frozen rivers that sing at night and men who walk 50 miles for pie. Try me." Eli's hands trembled as he unwrapped the gauze. "It wasn't human," he said finally. "Whatever she found, it wasn't from here." "Not from Alaska?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "Not from Earth." I glanced at him, waiting for the punchline, but his eyes were dead serious. "She said the ground behind the drilling site was warm," he continued. Like something was alive under it. Then she started hearing things through the radio, voices. She recorded one on her phone before she—" He stopped, looked out the window. "Before she what?" "She disappeared." I went to her cabin to look for her, but he was there instead. The foreman said she ran off, but there was blood on the floor, and her phone was gone. "Your foreman did this to you?" "Yeah," he whispered, "because I told him I was going to the troopers. He came after me. I got away near the bridge." I didn't answer. I wanted to, but every word I thought of sounded too small for the story he was telling. Instead, I reached across the cab and turned down the radio. "Listen," I said, "we're going to get to the next stop, Prospect Creek. There's a ranger station there. You can explain it all when we have people around. Until then, keep your head down." He nodded weakly. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," I muttered. Outside, the fog had started to thin. Trees emerged like slow ghosts, heavy with snow. The road widened for a short stretch, an old maintenance pullout. I glanced in the side mirror and froze. There were lights behind us. Headlights. One pair far back but closing in. No one should have been out here tonight. I hadn't seen another truck since Coldfoot. Eli noticed my eyes. "That's him," he said. I felt my stomach turn to ice. "You sure?" He nodded, voice shaking. "The pickup, white F-250. He's got a gun." I pressed harder on the accelerator. Little Bear responded with a growl, the trailer rocking as the tires gripped the frozen road. The headlights behind us grew larger, brighter, too steady to be random. Whoever it was knew what they were doing. "He's trying to box us in," I said. The kid turned, watching the lights. "He won't stop." "Well," I said, eyes locked on the road ahead, "neither will I." The highway bent left into a narrow canyon cut between two ridges. The snow made everything blur together, sky and land one long gray streak. I could feel the tires slipping, biting, slipping again. The other vehicle drew closer until its headlights filled my mirrors, bleaching the cab with white light. Then it rammed the back of my trailer. The impact jolted us forward. Eli shouted. The coffee in my thermos splashed onto the dash. "Hang on," I yelled. The pickup hit again, harder this time. The entire rig shuddered, chains rattling, metal screaming. I yanked the wheel slightly, fishtailing just enough to throw off his aim. The trailer swung, snow exploding from the tires. He backed off, just a few car lengths, but I knew he wasn't done. My mind was already racing. The next safe stop was 20 miles away, and if the road iced worse, we wouldn't make it. Then I saw a sign, Old Mining Road, no winter maintenance. I made a split-second choice. Hold on, kid. I turned the wheel and veered onto the narrow turnoff. Snow flew up in blinding waves as Little Bear's tires dug into unplowed ground. The trailer bucked once, twice, then steadied. The pickup followed for a moment, its headlights swerving wildly in the mirror, then stopped at the junction. He didn't chase us. He just sat there, watching. For a long stretch, neither of us said a word. The truck idled rough, steam curling from the hood. Finally, Eli whispered, "He won't need to follow. He knows where we're going." I turned toward him. "What do you mean?" His eyes lifted, terrified but certain. "Raven's Hollow, that's where it started." Outside, the snow fell heavier, and somewhere in the dark between the trees, the CB crackled back to life. Only this time, it wasn't a voice. It was a low hum, pulsing, slow, like something deep beneath the ground was trying to wake up. The hum coming from the CB wasn't mechanical. I'd heard engine resonance, bad grounding, even stray frequency bleed from pipeline radios. But this was different. It felt alive. A low, rhythmic vibration deep enough to make the dash rattle. Eli flinched. "That's what I meant," he whispered. "That's what she heard before she disappeared. The signal." I reached over and turned the knob to cut the power. The speaker popped once, then fell silent. But the air in the cab still seemed to tremble, like the sound hadn't come from the radio at all. "Tell me straight," I said, eyes on him. "You think that noise has something to do with whatever's under the ground at Raven's Hollow?" He nodded. "It started 3 weeks ago. The crew said it was feedback from the comms tower, but Claire, she said it wasn't a signal going out. It was one coming in." The heater hummed. The windshield fogged at the corners. "Coming in from where?" I asked. Eli's voice was barely audible. "Below." I laughed once, short, sharp. "Kid, you've been out here too long. There's nothing below but frozen dirt." "I saw it," he said suddenly. "The night she vanished, the drill site glowed, like metal but alive. He stopped, swallowing hard. "The foreman. His name's Rudd. He said it was gas flare reflection, but there was no flame. It was blue, moving like it was breathing." I didn't want to believe him, but something in his voice, raw, trembling, too scared to be fake, made me glance out the window. The snow was thick again, but through it the tree line pulsed faintly. A bluish shimmer, deep between the trunks, just enough to make the shadows twitch. I blinked, and it was gone. "Okay," I said finally. "Here's what we're going to do. We keep heading north. There's a maintenance outpost about 15 miles up. We'll stop there, radio in, and—" The CB crackled back to life before I could finish. Only this time, the hum had turned into words. "Not yours, not hers. You brought him." The voice wasn't male or female. It was layered, metallic, like 10 people speaking through one throat. The lights on the CB blinked erratically. Eli froze. "That's it," he said. "That's what she heard." I slammed the power switch off again. The voice died, but the silence it left behind was worse. My hands were shaking, though I told myself it was just the cold. "Whatever trick this is," I said, "we're not playing along." But even as I said it, I knew we weren't dealing with a prank. You don't fake a voice that crawls down your spine like electricity. We drove on. The narrow mining road twisted between ridges, the trees closing in tight. The snow made everything unreal, branches sagging under its weight, the air glittering with ice crystals that seemed to hang still in the headlights. Then, up ahead, I saw movement again. Not a person this time, a light. It hovered maybe 50 feet off the ground, pale and wavering like the reflection of moonlight on moving water, but the sky was overcast. There was no moon. Eli leaned forward, eyes wide. "That's it," he whispered. The light pulsed once, twice. Then it blinked out. My heart hammered. "We're turning back," I said. Eli shook his head. "If we turn back, he'll be waiting." He was right. The pickup driver, Rudd, if that was really his name, was somewhere behind us. And if he wanted this kid dead, he'd find a way. So I kept going. The road narrowed further until it was barely more than 2 tire tracks cutting through the trees. Branches scraped against the cab like fingernails. The snow had stopped falling, but fog pooled in the hollows, glowing faintly in the headlights. And then, without warning, the radio flickered on again. Only this time, it wasn't voices. It was a sound like breathing. Slow, steady, wet. Eli covered his ears. "Turn it off!" I hit the switch, but the noise didn't stop. It was inside the cab now, vibrating through the metal, through the steering column, through my bones. I slammed the brakes. The truck lurched, trailer sliding half sideways before settling. Then came the smell. Not exhaust, not oil, something older, like burnt copper and ozone, sharp enough to sting the back of my throat. "What the hell is that?" I muttered. Eli didn't answer. He was staring out the window, face pale. I followed his gaze. There, maybe 20 yards away, the snow had collapsed inward, forming a shallow crater. At its center, something glowed faintly blue beneath the surface, like light trapped under ice. A shape, circular, too perfect to be natural. Eli whispered, "That's where it started." The hum rose again, vibrating the air until my teeth ached. The blue light pulsed in rhythm with it, faster, stronger, as though it recognized us. "Get back in the truck," I said. "We're leaving." But before either of us could move, the light erupted upward. A burst of color, blue and white and silver, shot from the crater, slicing through the trees like lightning in reverse. The whole forest lit up for a heartbeat, then fell into darkness again. The radio hissed, and through the static the calm male voice from before returned, quiet and deliberate. "I told you, Tessa, you should have kept driving." For a long moment neither of us moved. The forest had gone dead still after that flash, as if the light had burned sound out of the air. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles had gone white. Eli was whispering something to himself, fast and breathless. I couldn't make out the words. Then, from the tree line, came the crunch of boots on snow. Slow, deliberate. One pair of footsteps. I killed the headlights. Instantly, the cab fell into shadow. My pulse pounded in my ears. The footsteps kept coming. Whoever it was knew exactly where we were. Eli looked at me, eyes wide. "It's him," he mouthed. I reached down to the glove compartment, pulled out the flare gun I kept there for emergencies. Not much use against a rifle, but better than nothing. The steps stopped. And then, from somewhere in the fog outside, a man's voice called softly, "Tessa, you shouldn't have brought him here." The same voice from the CB. Calm, measured, almost polite. Eli tensed. I could feel the panic rolling off him. I cracked the driver's door open an inch and shouted, "Step back! I'm armed!" The fog shifted. A silhouette appeared. Tall, heavy coat, hood pulled up. "Armed?" he said. "You think that matters now?" I fired the flare gun straight into the air. The red light exploded above the trees, bathing everything in blood color for a heartbeat. That's when I saw his face. Rudd. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just stared at me through the rising haze of steam. His eyes were wrong, too dark, the pupils blown wide like someone who'd stared at the sun too long. Eli's voice trembled beside me. "He's not supposed to be here." Rudd tilted his head, almost curious. "I told you to leave it alone, Eli, but you had to go digging." I leveled the flare gun at him. "Step back from the truck." He smiled faintly. "You don't understand what you're carrying." "What the hell are you talking about?" "The signal. he said. "It doesn't stop once it's found you. It follows. It learns." Before I could answer, the CB crackled to life again, on its own. The same low hum, but layered now with whispers. Dozens of voices overlapping, forming words that didn't belong in any language I knew. Eli clutched his head, groaning. "Make it stop!" Rudd's smile widened. "You can't stop it. You can only join it." Then the temperature dropped. Fast. Frost spread across the inside of the windshield, spiderwebbing in seconds. My breath turned solid in front of me. The metal under my hands went from cold to burning cold. Rudd stepped closer. The air around him shimmered faintly, like heat distortion, only inverted, light bending inward instead of out. His shadow stretched wrong across the snow. Eli reached for the door handle. "We have to go!" I slammed the gear shift into drive and floored it. The tires spun, bit, and the truck lurched forward. Rudd didn't move out of the way. The moment we hit the spot where he'd been standing, the headlights flickered, and he was gone. No impact, no body, just empty air and a sudden jolt, like the truck had driven through static. We didn't stop. I kept the pedal down until the road widened and the fog thinned. Only when the hum faded behind us did I let myself breathe again. Eli was shaking so badly he could barely hold the bandage on his arm. "He's not human anymore," he said. "Whatever came up from the ground, it changed him." I didn't want to believe that. Men go bad all the time. Greed, jealousy, madness. But changed? That was something else. Still, I couldn't shake the image of those eyes, black and endless. "What does it want?" I asked. Eli looked at me with a hollow kind of fear. To finish what it started. We drove in silence for a long stretch. The night outside was endless. No stars, no horizon, just snow and darkness, and the occasional flicker of blue light far behind us. At mile marker 302, the road curved along a ridge that overlooked the valley where Raven's Hollow sat, a cluster of steel buildings half buried in snow. Even from this distance, I could see the faint pulse of that same blue glow spreading under the ice like veins. Eli stared at it, whispering, "It's awake." I slowed, eyes on the faint light moving near the compound. Shapes, 3, maybe 4, walking between the buildings. At first I thought they were people. Then one turned its head, and the light came from inside it, pulsing through its skin like bioluminescence. I gripped the wheel tighter. "Tell me those are machines." Eli didn't answer. When I looked over, he was holding something in his hands. A phone, cracked, blood-smeared. He powered it on, the screen flickering. "Claire's," he said. A single video file was open. He hit play. Static filled the cab. Then a voice, hers, whispering fast, "If you hear the signal, don't follow it. It's not a call, it's a map." The screen flickered again, and for half a second I saw her face, eyes wide with terror, before the image cut to blue light. Then the phone died. The CB popped once, faintly like a heartbeat. Eli looked up. "It's pulling us toward it," he said. I swallowed. "Then we turn off." He shook his head. "No. If we run, it'll find someone else. We have to end it." I stared at him. "You mean go there?" "Yes," he said. "To the site, to finish what Claire started." The blue glow flared brighter in the distance, lighting the horizon like false dawn. And beneath it, a shape moved, massive, shifting, crawling just below the frozen ground. It wasn't the earth breathing. It was something under the earth. The ridge trembled beneath us, just a small vibration at first, like the heartbeat of the land itself. Then the hum came back, low, insistent, pushing through the truck's steel frame until it felt like the sound was inside my chest. Eli's knuckles were white around the dead phone. "It's right below us," he whispered. The road curved down toward Raven's Hollow. The complex sprawled across the valley floor like a scar of metal in a field of snow. Most of the camp's lights were dead. Only a few security lamps still glowed orange through the storm, flickering against the skeletal outline of drilling towers and cranes frozen in place, and beneath them, the ground pulsed, faintly blue. I pulled the truck to a stop at the overlook. The air outside was still, but every few seconds the snow lifted in short, circular gusts, swirling like something was breathing under the ice. "You really think we can end that?" I asked. Eli turned toward me, eyes fever bright. "Claire said it needs a signal, a transmitter. That's how it spreads. If we can find it, destroy it, maybe it'll stop." "Kid, you're talking about taking down an alien radio with a flare gun and bad luck." He gave a shaky grin. "You got a better plan?" I didn't. I checked the fuel gauge. Half tank. Enough to run heat for a few hours if we had to hole up. I shut off the headlights and let the cab go dark. The valley below us glowed faintly, blue veins pulsing through snow like light under skin. Rudd's voice echoed in my memory. "You can't stop it. You can only join it." I didn't like those odds. "All right," I said finally. "We go down, find this transmitter, and we get the hell out. No heroics, you hear me?" He nodded. We started the descent. The mining road twisted down through switchbacks, slick with ice. The glow grew stronger the closer we got. It wasn't just under the ground anymore. It shimmered across the trees, reflecting off the snow, making it hard to tell what was solid and what was light. By the time we reached the first outbuilding, the hum was so strong it made my teeth ache. The camp looked deserted. The wind pushed at torn tarps and bent metal siding, but there were no voices, no movement. A bulldozer sat frozen mid-turn, a snowdrift halfway up its treads. Then I saw footprints, large, booted, heading toward the main hangar. Rudd's. I cut the engine. The silence that followed wasn't silence at all. The hum was everywhere now, woven into the air like invisible thread. Eli reached for the door. "We go on foot from here." I grabbed his sleeve. "You're bleeding, freezing, and probably concussed. You're not going anywhere without me." He hesitated, then nodded. We stepped into the cold. The air burned my lungs. Snow crunched under our boots with the brittle sound of breaking glass. The blue light flickered across the metal walls, faintly rhythmic, like a heartbeat counting down. At the hangar's entrance, the door hung half open, the metal bent inward as though something had forced its way out. The smell hit me first, burnt insulation, ozone, and something organic, sweet, and rotten all at once. Inside, the light was stronger. Rows of equipment stood covered in frost, wires snaking across the floor. In the center of the space, a drill platform rose out of the concrete, its borehole descending into darkness. Around it, metal scaffolding had melted and reformed, twisted into curved shapes that didn't look engineered. They looked grown. Eli stopped dead. That wasn't here before. From the far corner, a voice echoed softly. "It changes fast once it wakes up." Rudd stepped out of the shadows. His parka was gone, his shirt torn and dark with frost. His skin looked pale, almost translucent, and the veins beneath it glowed faintly blue. Eli took a step back. "What did you do?" Rudd smiled. "I listened." The hum deepened, a bass note that shook loose snow from the rafters. The blue veins in the walls brightened in response, pulsing in sync with his words. "It's not here to destroy us," Rudd said. "It's us, what we could become. It called me first, and I answered." I lifted the flare gun. "You're sick. You need help." He laughed softly. "Help? Tessa, you don't help evolution, you surrender to it." The ground shuddered. From the borehole came a burst of light, brighter than a welding torch. Metal groaned. Somewhere deep below, something huge was moving. Eli shouted over the noise. "The transmitter! It's under the platform!" Rudd turned to him, eyes burning blue. "You can't stop it, boy!" Eli lunged forward before I could grab him, slamming a wrench from a nearby table into the control panel. Sparks flew. The hum spiked to a shriek. Rudd roared and grabbed him by the throat, lifting him off his feet. His hand left streaks of light where it touched skin. I fired. The flare hit Rudd square in the chest. The red fire clung to him, hissing where it touched his glowing skin. He screamed, not from pain, but from fury. The sound was wrong, layered, echoing through the air like a chorus. He dropped Eli and staggered back. The light in his veins flickered. "Now!" Eli shouted. We ran for the platform. The floor vibrated under our boots. The control panel was sparking violently, its readout flashing strange symbols instead of numbers. Eli grabbed a crowbar and jammed it between the gears. Metal shrieked. The hum cracked into a roar. Then the floor split open. A column of light burst upward from the borehole, blue, white, and blinding. It hit the roof, splitting it open like foil. The air turned electric. I dragged Eli toward the exit, snow and debris raining down behind us. As we stumbled outside, the light shot higher, straight into the clouds, piercing them in a perfect vertical line. The sound that followed was like every radio on Earth tuning at once. And somewhere within that noise, I heard Claire's voice. "Don't let it reach the sky." Then the light vanished. The silence afterward was absolute. The hum was gone. The ground still. Eli collapsed to his knees, gasping. Did we stop it? I looked back at the hangar. The roof was gone. Smoke rose in slow spirals. For a second, I almost believed it was over. Then, from the far side of the valley, another pulse of blue light flickered beneath the snow. Another one woke up. The next few seconds stretched thin, like time itself was holding its breath. The pulse of blue light across the valley rose and fell with a steady rhythm, alive, deliberate. Eli leaned against the truck, face pale beneath the blood and grime. "It wasn't just here," he said, voice cracking. "It's everywhere. Every site that drilled deep enough to hit the permafrost. They all woke part of it up." I stared across the frozen plain. The glow was spreading, branching out beneath the snow in veins that led toward the horizon. The ground shifted under my boots, subtle but wrong, like the earth had decided to start breathing. "We need to get out," I said. "Now." Eli didn't argue. We climbed back into Little Bear and I gunned the engine to life. The sound of the diesel was comforting, a familiar heartbeat in a night that had stopped making sense. The hum was gone for now, but the silence it left behind was heavy. I pulled onto the main road and turned south, away from the valley. The sky above us flickered faintly blue, reflecting the light below. Eli pressed his hands against the dashboard. "We didn't kill it. We just woke it up faster." "Then we find someone who can shut it down," I said. "Scientists, military, anyone who listens to reason." He laughed, a short, broken sound. "You think they'll believe a truck driver and a runaway kid talking about singing lights and buried machines?" I didn't answer, because he was right. We drove in silence for maybe 20 minutes, until the road leveled out and the glow behind us faded to a faint shimmer. I let myself breathe again. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel too tightly. Then from the CB speaker, a voice whispered softly, "Southbound unit, you're heading the wrong way." I froze. It was Claire's voice. Eli's head snapped toward the radio. "That's her." "She's dead," I said. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, but it's still her voice." The radio hissed again. "It's moving. Follow the ridge, before it spreads." I reached for the knob to turn it off, but then, faintly through the static, came another sound, a heartbeat, slow, deep, and mechanical. Eli grabbed my arm. "That's it. That's the main source. She's telling us where it's going." "Eli, if it reaches Fairbanks, it's over." I stared out the windshield. Snow whipped past the headlights, a silver curtain blinding the world beyond. I wanted to keep driving south, to get as far away as possible, but something in Claire's voice, calm, certain, dug in under my ribs. "What ridge?" I asked. Eli pointed at the map screen on my dashboard. His fingers trembled. "Here. The pipeline runs along it. If the signal travels through metal, it'll use the line to spread." He nodded. "Exactly." I sighed. Then we cut it off before it gets there." The kid looked at me, surprised. "You believe me now?" "I don't have to," I said, "but I've seen enough weird tonight to trust the road when it points me somewhere." We turned east, following a side road that wound along the ridgeline. The terrain climbed sharply, the truck straining as we gained elevation. Below us, the forest spread out in silver and black patches. Every so often, a faint flicker of blue moved beneath the snow, like veins carrying light instead of blood. When we reached the top, I parked and cut the engine. The world went still. The hum started again, so faint it could have been my imagination. "Do you hear that?" Eli asked. I nodded. "It's under us." We stepped out into the cold. The sky above was clear now, the aurora stretched in long green ribbons across the stars. The beauty of it almost hurt to look at. And then, under our boots, the ground shifted. A crack opened in the ice with a sound like thunder muffled under water. Pale light leaked through, thin at first, then brighter. Eli dropped to one knee beside the fissure. "It's right here," he whispered. "The source." I knelt beside him. The opening was narrow but deep, a shaft of blue light pulsing far below. The air rising from it wasn't warm. It was alive. It vibrated against the skin. "That's not a machine," I said. "That's something else." Eli reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the cracked phone again. "Claire said the transmitter connects to living tissue. If we can overload it—" "How?" He smiled weakly. "Electricity. You want to electrocute the earth?" "Just the part that's listening." We used jumper cables from the truck, stretching them toward the fissure. I clipped one end to the truck's battery and handed the other to him. "This is insane," I muttered. He met my eyes. "Yeah, but if it works, maybe the road stays ours a little longer." He dropped the cable into the crack. The hum spiked instantly, sharp enough to make my vision blur. The light in the ground pulsed faster, blue to white to blue again. "Now!" Eli shouted. I turned the ignition key, revving the engine. Electricity surged through the line, sparking where the cables met the light. The air filled with the smell of ozone and burning frost. The hum rose into a scream. For one heartbeat, the world went blinding white. The ridge shook. Snow and ice flew upward like shattered glass. I hit the ground, covering my head as the sound tore through me, so loud it became silence. Then, just as suddenly, it was over. When I opened my eyes, the sky was still. The blue glow was gone. The fissure had sealed, smooth as untouched snow. "Eli?" I called. He was lying a few feet away, breathing shallow but alive. His hand was burned where he'd held the cable, the skin blistered but steady. I helped him sit up. The world around us was quiet again. No hum, no light, just the soft hiss of wind through the trees. "Did we stop it?" I asked. Eli looked at the horizon. "For now." The aurora shimmered faintly above us, green fading into violet. I turned the key in the ignition again. The truck groaned, coughed, then came back to life. The headlights swept over the snow, catching nothing but the curve of the ridge and our own tracks leading back to the road. As I pulled onto the highway, the CB crackled once more, soft, almost gentle. Claire's voice whispered one last time, "Keep the engine running. Don't let it sleep." Then silence. We drove south under a sky that was no longer blue, and for the first time that night, the snow fell quietly. But miles behind us, somewhere deep under the frozen valley, the ground breathed again. Faint, slow, patient. We didn't speak for a long while. The night swallowed sound, and the steady rumble of the truck felt almost like a heartbeat, fragile proof that something human was still moving in all that silence. Eli had wrapped his burned hand in the torn sleeve of his parka. He stared out the passenger window, face lit by the dashboard glow, eyes distant. I wanted to ask what he was thinking, but I already knew. You don't look at the horizon like that unless you're seeing ghosts. The road south twisted between dark hills, slick and narrow. I kept the truck close to the center line, Every so often I'd check the mirror, half afraid I'd see that white pickup again, half afraid I wouldn't. The CB stayed dead, just faint static like a sleeping breath. After an hour, Eli broke the silence. "You think it's really over?" I didn't answer right away. The aurora had faded to a faint green smear on the edge of the clouds, and the stars looked sharp enough to cut. "I think it's waiting," I said finally. He nodded like he expected that. Claire used to say the earth keeps memories. Every road, every river, it all remembers what passed through it. I gave a dry laugh. "Well, this road's got a hell of a memory then." We passed a sign half buried in snow, "Cold Foot 47 miles." It felt like a lifetime ago that I'd stopped there for burnt coffee and small talk. Eli shifted, wincing. "When you saw him, Rudd, did he look human to you?" I gripped the wheel tighter. He looked like something trying to remember how. Eli was quiet for a moment. Then, "It might have been using him, like a voice box." "Then what the hell does it want to say?" He didn't answer. We drove another 20 miles in silence. The wind picked up, sharp and restless, carrying snow in thin spirals across the road. I was just starting to relax when the truck's headlights flickered. Once. Twice. Then the dashboard lights went dark. "Not now," I muttered, slapping the panel. Little Bear coughed, sputtered, and the engine dropped to an idle. Eli leaned forward. "Battery?" "Brand new. This isn't mechanical." And then I felt it. The hum. Faint, but there. Crawling back through the metal like a pulse waking up. "God," Eli whispered. "It's not dead." The CB hissed softly. Static. Then a voice, low and almost kind. "You ran far enough, Tessa." I froze. It wasn't Rudd's voice anymore. It was mine. My own voice coming through the radio, soft and steady. "You can't run from yourself." Eli's head snapped toward me, terrified. "I know." The speaker crackled again. "Turn around," my voice said. "You left the door open." "What door?" Eli whispered. The air grew heavy. The windows fogged from the inside even though the heater was off. I could feel pressure building in my ears, like the world was inhaling around us. Then, faintly through the fog, I saw it. The blue light again. Not from outside this time, but bleeding through the seams of the dashboard, the vents, the cracks around the door. It was inside the truck. "Out!" I shouted. We flung the doors open and stumbled into the snow. The air outside was bitter, burning cold, but it was clean. The blue glow pulsed inside the cab, slow and rhythmic, lighting up the windshield from within. Eli fell to his knees. "It's using the truck's battery. It's feeding off it." I looked back toward the ridge. Faint blue veins were threading across the horizon again, spreading under the snow like wildfire. "It's not just one," I said. "It's a network." He nodded weakly. "The drill sites, the metal, the power lines. It's all connected." I wanted to scream, to punch something, to wake up from this nightmare of light and cold and hum. But the road doesn't care what you want. It just keeps going. "Come on," I said. "We're finishing this." "How?" "We take out the truck." Eli blinked at me. "You mean..." "Yeah, the power source. If it's feeding on current, we cut the line. Permanently." He hesitated. "That'll set off the fuel tank." "I know." He looked at me for a long time, the snow swirling between us. Then he nodded once. I climbed back into the cab. The blue light flared brighter, the hum deepening to a growl. My reflection in the windshield looked wrong. Eyes too bright, mouth not moving in sync. I reached under the seat, pulled out the flare gun, and aimed at the floorboard. "Hey!" Eli called from outside. "You sure you want to do this?" I looked at him, at the kid who'd lost everything and still kept fighting, at the endless white road that had carried us this far. "No," I said, "but I'll do it anyway." I fired. The flare hit the metal with a deafening crack. A second later, the fuel caught. The explosion was fast, brutal, a burst of fire and blue light that tore through the cab and threw both of us backward into the snow. When the smoke cleared, the truck was gone. Nothing left but a scorched frame glowing faintly against the night. The hum stopped. I lay on my back, snow melting under the heat of the blast, staring at the sky. The aurora was gone. Just stars now, cold and far away. Eli crawled over, coughing. "You did it." I shook my head. "We did it." He managed a faint smile. In the distance, the faint blue veins beneath the snow flickered once, like a dying heartbeat, then went dark. The silence that followed was so deep it almost hurt. I closed my eyes and let it fill me. For the first time in hours, the road didn't hum. It just breathed. Dawn came slow and gray, the kind that doesn't bother to warm anything. Smoke still hung low over what was left of the truck, curling upward like tired ghosts. The fire had burned out hours ago, leaving only twisted metal and the smell of diesel and frost. Eli and I sat on a snowbank, wrapped in the torn remains of a blanket I'd found in the wreckage. The world was quiet, too quiet. No hum, no lights, no whispers on the CB, just the sound of wind moving through the pines. He broke the silence first. "What now?" "Now?" I said, staring at the blackened skeleton of Little Bear. "Now we walk." He managed a dry laugh. "You think anyone's gonna believe us?" "Doesn't matter if they do." I looked south toward the faint ribbon of road vanishing into the mist. The road remembers, Eli. Someone will come looking for what happened here. They'll find the holes, the melted steel. They'll feel it, even if they can't explain it. He nodded slowly. "You think it's really gone?" I didn't answer right away. The sun was rising, a pale disk fighting through clouds, and for a moment everything looked ordinary again. Snow, trees, silence. But then I remembered what Claire had said through that static. "It's not a call. It's a map." "It might be quiet," I said, "but quiet isn't the same as gone." We started walking south. Our boots crunched through the crusted snow, each step leaving shallow prints that the wind immediately began to erase. After a few miles, the sun broke through, faint but steady, and I could almost pretend the night before had been a dream. Almost. At the edge of the ridge, we stopped to rest. From up here, you could see miles of wilderness, white plains and black spruce, a world pretending to be untouched. But somewhere beneath that snow, I knew the ground still pulsed, waiting. Eli leaned on his knees, breathing hard. "You ever think about leaving Alaska?" I smiled faintly. "Every damn winter." He looked at me serious. "You should." I shrugged. "Maybe I will. Maybe I'll find a small town down south, fix up a diner, make bad coffee, name the place after a truck that saved my life." He smiled. "Little Bear's Cafe." "Sounds about right." We walked on, the road eventually leading us to a ranger station near Prospect Creek. The building was dark, abandoned for the season, but there was a working radio inside. I called in a distress signal, gave coordinates, and waited. Hours passed. No response. Eli fell asleep on a bench, his burned hand resting across his chest. I sat by the window, watching the snow drift sideways. Every so often, I swore I could hear the faint echo of that old hum, far below the earth. Maybe it was memory, maybe it was warning. By nightfall, headlights finally appeared on the horizon. A state trooper truck, lights flashing weakly through the storm. Relief hit so hard it almost hurt. When the officer stepped out, a woman with sharp eyes and a face carved by cold, I wanted to tell her everything. The drilling site, the light, the voice. But when I opened my mouth, all that came out was, "There was an accident. We lost the truck." She nodded, scribbling notes, asking the usual questions. I gave half-truths, because the whole story would have sounded like madness. And maybe it was. They drove us to Fairbanks that night. Hot coffee, fluorescent lights, a room that didn't move under me. I should have felt safe. Instead, I kept listening. For hums, for whispers, for any sign that the road still remembered me. Eli got patched up and taken to Anchorage for questioning. He looked back once as they let him out, eyes tired but steady. I gave him a small nod, the kind that means, "Keep going, kid." Weeks passed. The official reports called it a localized seismic event near the Ravens Hollow drill site. Gas pockets, ice fractures. They said the blue light was electrical discharge from metal contamination in the permafrost. Science doing what science always does, making monsters sound polite. I didn't argue. Spring came early that year. I left Alaska in late March, heading south through Yukon, then into Montana. Bought a used pickup and drove until the sky stopped looking bruised. Found a roadside diner outside Missoula that needed a cook and a name. I gave them both. Some nights, after closing, I still hear the low thrum of engines on faraway roads. Sometimes it's trucks. Sometimes it's something else. The kind of sound that hums just below your heartbeat. I don't flinch anymore when I hear it. I just whisper to the dark, "I'm still here." Because maybe that's all the road ever wanted, to be remembered. And if you're ever driving north on the Dalton, late enough that the world feels thin, maybe you'll hear it too. A faint hum under the tires, a whisper in the static of the CB. If you do, keep your lights on, keep your eyes open, and whatever you see standing in the snow, don't stop, because some things up there are still awake. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support inspires new tales on the open road.